every fade. Life totals dropping, feel the air. Tapping lands, drawing destiny. Victory's close, just you wait and see. Magic dreams in my hand tonight. Summon legends, see them ignite. Battlefields, roaring cars in flight. In this realm of magic, I take flight.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Deck Tech series, where today we're going to be talking about Esper Enchantments, or some of you know it as Esper Pixie. So before we get into the actual deck itself, I want to go over why we're talking about this deck, because we do have the upcoming Pro Tour coming up this weekend. If you're watching this video before the Pro Tour, cool, love it. If you're watching it afterwards, maybe you'll see some of the things I was talking about, or maybe I completely whiffed. I don't know. We'll get to it. So as I was scouring through some tournament reports and looking at certain things, the main deck to beat right now is Esper Pixies. It's like 75% of my ladder matches on Arena, and I'm playing best of 3. And it's everywhere. I saw it at SCG Con Portland in the 5K I played in. I played against it like 4 times. I think it was like 3 or 4 times. It is the deck to beat right now. And when we get into the deck, you'll see why this deck is so good and why people are trying to either beat it or just join it. And so that's one of the 2 things I think are going to happen this weekend at the Pro Tour. Yeah, obviously it's either one or the other. Yeah, okay, whatever, haters. The thing is either people are going to beat it and they're going to come up with some new strategy, or they're going to join it. That's the 2 options we really have right now with Esper Pixie. This deck is very oppressive. It's very quick, and we're in that type of format. Now, there are a lot of deck choices out there, but if you're going to play professionally and competitively, you got to be aware of this deck, because this is the deck that you're going to face probably most of the day. Of the 6 decks, Esper Pixies being number 1, we had Gruul Aggro coming in at number 2, which seems to be the best like coin flip matchup against this deck. You either draw really fast and really well and can kill them faster than they can do their little bounce backs and combos with the buying back their discards and things like that. Mono Red is another one that's up there. And then you have Dimir, Golgari, and 4-color Zur bringing up the bottom 3. And it's interesting because Esper and Gruul are about the same cost money-wise to build the deck. You're looking at 210 to 260, depending on what variant, how many copies of certain cards, things like that. Same with Gruul Aggro. And then Mono Red is your cheapest option, running you about 150 to 200, depending on, again, the build. Dimir and Golgari bring up your more mid-level expensive decks at like 375 to 450, and then Zur is topping out at almost 600 to play certain variants of the deck. So that was some of the things I wanted to get out there and show, that these top 6 decks, what people are looking at possibly playing this weekend at the Pro Tour. I haven't heard any whispers or seen too much innovation. Obviously, these teams that test for the Pro Tour like to keep it tight to the chest if they're figuring out how to beat a certain metagame. Pixies is the metagame right now, so you either play it or you beat it, one or the other. So I think we're going to see a huge field of Pixie and possibly, hopefully, some breakout decks that go up against it. Obviously, these teams are much more versed at handling playtesting and figuring this stuff out, and a lot more brains come together, a lot more great magic minds coming together to try to figure out the format. I myself have been playtesting, trying to figure out how to beat this deck, but I just haven't figured it out. So anyways, let's just jump over into the deck and check it out. All right, so here's the deck, right? I took a list that models a majority of the list. I mean, they're going to alter. They're not going to be the full 75 every single time, but majority of them have about 70 to 72 of the same cards when you look at different Esper Pixie lists, right? So let's just jump down card from card and just go at it. So like Nurturing Pixie right here, this is one of the many cards that will return a non-land, non-fairy permanent back to the hand, giving it a 1/1 counter. So you get a 2/2 flyer for 1 mana. A lot of the times you're bouncing back Hopeless Nightmare, which when it enters, opponent loses 2 life and discards cards. So you drain them, you have them discard a card. Storm Chaser's Talent is another good option for this. When it comes into play, you make an Otter with Prowess. Whenever you're playing your non-creature spells, your Otter is getting bigger. And then the second ability, a lot of the times you're not activating the last ability unless the game goes really, really, really long. And you don't have a ton of instant sorceries in this deck, so typically you're stopping at level 2. And what you're doing at level 2 is you're bouncing back majority of the time, hey, this town isn't big enough. Because this costs 3 less if it targets a permanent you control. So you're usually bouncing one of their good spells, their good permanents, like maybe a Overlord or something like that to get it out of the way, or token or whatever, and then you're bouncing back your Storm Chaser's Talent so you can rebuy it again with another Otter. Then you got your Optimistic Scavenger, which whenever an enchantment you control enters, or when you fully unlock a room, which there's no rooms, but whenever an enchantment enters, put a 1/1 counter on a target creature. So playing this thing, playing Nightmare, both of those are going to give you counters to those. This guy right here, Spiteful Hexmage, when it enters, create a curse roll attached to target creature you control. A lot of the times, people are attaching it to the Optimistic Scavenger, or they're putting it on the Nurture Pixie, because a majority of these creatures, or even the Otter token, majority of these 1-drop creatures you're playing, or early creatures, are already base power 1/1. So it doesn't matter to put that enchantment on there. All you're really wanting to do is getting this trigger when that guy comes in. Going into your 2-drops here, you have Fear of Isolation, which an additional cost to cast the spell, return a permanent you control to its owner's hand. So bouncing the Storm Chaser's Talent, bouncing the Hopeless Nightmare, or even bouncing one of these guys. You have Momentum Breaker, which this card is good no matter what. Say they have no creatures in play. Now they got to discard a card. If they do have one creature in play, they got to sack that one creature. The Start Your Engines, kind of irrelevant. I'm sure there's 1 or 2 games you're going to come down, you're like, I got to gain some life, and so you sacrifice it so you can maybe get there on the crackback of a win. And then you got Nowhere to Run. This card is really good for dealing with ward, hexproof, any of that stuff, because it makes you be able to target as if it wasn't even there. And the ability that you can flash it in. -3/-3 kills a lot of things in this format, especially against the Pixie deck itself. You kill any target you hit, even the big flyer of the 2/3 Fear of Isolation. So, of course, it's running 4 copies of this. It's running 2 copies of Go for the Throat, which there's not a lot of artifacts running around, but now that we have Aetherdrift and there's a lot of vehicles and other things starting to pop up, I feel like this card has been shaved down to allow in for Spiteful Hexmage and maybe a couple more of some other cards. Then you've got 3 Kato Bane of Nightmares. Now this guy you're obviously Nujitsuing in. A lot of times you've got a flyer that goes in unchecked. He comes in, hits him as a 3/4. Then you get to tap something down, maybe make an emblem or surveil. Surveiling is great because you get to draw more cards and then pitch off those lands. And then last but not least, we already talked about this town ain't big enough. This card really is a 2-cost card. Very, very rarely are you going to be casting this for 4 and a blue. Very rarely. And then we look at the lands. There's only 1 basic in here, a Swamp, 2 Adarkar Waste, 2 Restless Anchorage, which another flyer evasion, 4 Seachrome, 3 Cave of Qualis, Koyos, whatever you want to call it, Concealed Courtyard, Darkslick Shores, and Underground River. So you've got 8 Pain lands. You got a bunch of come into play, super fast lands. And then you've got 1 set of come into play tap lands. And it's only 2 of them. Now let's go look at the sideboard. The sideboard here, you got 1 Spell Pierce. You got 2 Grim Baubles, which are pretty good for the matchup here. You got 3 Destroy Evil. Really good against the matchup, really good against Zur, really good against anything that's really playing big creatures or enchantments, which is a lot of the decks out there. You have another Momentum Breaker. If you want to bring that in, you can bring it in. It's like Rule Aggro. You got Rest in Peace. You know, if you go up against some kind of graveyard hate or something like that, really easy to exile their graveyard. Sheltered by Ghosts is a 1 of. Shrouded Shepherd, you go up against Jeskai Convoke. This is really good at killing off their little dudes. And then No More Lies if you really, really got to come in and have some kind of counter magic or something. So as you can see, this deck is, its curve tops out at 3. Realistically, if you take the Katos out, you top out at 2. This deck is super aggressive, super fast. And when you come in, you know, you drop a turn 1 Hopeless Nightmare, drop a turn 2 Pixie into another Hopeless Nightmare. You're already, if they're playing, let's say they're on the play, or let's say they're on the draw, right? And you're on the play, you drop a Hopeless Nightmare, they're down to 6 cards, they draw, they're up to 7, play a land. If they don't play nothing, they're still at 6. Next turn, you nurture Pixie, your Hopeless back, play it again, now they're down to 5. They draw, play a land, play a spell, they're down to 4. You can eat their hand fairly quickly with this deck. And then, whatever threats they do play, you come in with a Go for the Throat, or a Nowhere to Run, or a Momentum Breaker. You're really putting them behind. And so this deck can snowball really, really quickly. And so that's what gives it a lot of power. Now, if you can outclass their creatures faster than their removal can deal with it, a lot of the times you can beat this deck. And one of the reasons why I'm saying this is because I was playtesting a deck where you play Simulacrum Synthesizer. And you start playing down a bunch of artifacts and dudes, and if you start bringing out 7/7, 8/8 constructs, and they can't get rid of that stuff, you pretty much outclass their creatures fairly quickly and can damage them faster than they can do their little 2/2 damage, 3/3, you know, whatever, coming in with their little flyer. So that's where I think Zur has a little bit of advantage on it, when it can start outclassing and start getting those bigger creatures down. But Zur has to ramp up into it. The Domain Zur 4-color, it has to get lucky enough to be able to have a couple, Leyline Bindings to kind of interrupt things. Gruul Aggro's got to come out super fast against it and just dump its gas as fast as possible, because if not, they're going to get Momentum Breakered or Hopeless a lot of cards away, things like that. So as you can see, this deck is very efficient, very fast. It also has a lot of ways with, you know, casting this to Scry 2 with the 3 ability, being able to surveil with Kato if he gets in. Things like that will allow you to filter through the deck if you can. Now, this deck can brick, it can draw poorly, but it's very rare. This is a very efficient deck. So that's why I feel like this deck is such a menace. And I feel like it's going to be I wouldn't be surprised if it's 50% of the field for the Pro Tour, which seems like a high number, and a lot of people would say I'm crazy, but with how efficient this deck is and how good it is, it would not surprise me. So that's why I'm saying you're either going to play to beat this deck or you're going to join it. That's just a simple fact with this Pro Tour coming up. Now, moving forward, let's talk about possible ban/restriction. I don't think there is anything realistically that would neuter this deck so much as to maybe if, and it seems terrible to say, if maybe Storm Chaser's talent or This Town Ain't Big Enough is banned. I feel those are the only 2 cards that you could actually neuter this deck on because of the bouncing ability with this card and the ability to get it back over and over and over and over on a loop with Storm Chaser's talent. I got looped out in one of my games in Portland to where my opponent literally would just take my best creature off the board, bring this back, play it, and have enough mana to be able to cast this again, and then on his turn do the thing again where he plays this down, pays the 4 mana, and he had 7 mana. That's what you need, 4 + 1 + 2, to just keep this on a loop. And so you get that late in the game and you have the 7 mana, you can keep this on a loop and lock your opponent out of their best permanent/creature, whatever. And you just continue to make otters left and right, and you overwhelm them and you win the game. So those are the only 2 cards I could see getting the ban hammer. I mean, Storm Chaser's talent is, and This Town Ain't Big Enough is played, I believe, in every single deck that can play blue. I'm even thinking I seen Zur starting to play it, if I remember correctly, because it's just that good of a combo. So that is the only thing I could see them looking at after the Pro Tour, going, wow, this card and this card in 70% of the field, yeah, we got a problem here. So that's what I think should happen if we go down that road of we have a very high level of high number of these decks with this combo iteration in it, because this is very stifling to the format. If we have a 2-card combo that goes in every single deck that can play the color, it's going to be stifling to innovation. It's going to be stifling to the growth of the format, and it's just going to cause nobody to want to play anything other than this. So that's what I said. It's going to be interesting to see how this Pro Tour plays out. And I'm telling you right now, that is my pick for Wizards going, you know what? This is what we need. This is what we're going to do to fix it. And so I would be on the lookout of the Pro Tour and see how the deck field goes. And if you see a lot of Storm Chasers talents, I would start selling them off. Just for the fact that people are going to be looking for them to play the deck because it did so well, and or possible Banhammer coming for Standard. We haven't had one in a while. What was the last one we had? When they did, I believe it's when they did the Fable, the Mirror Breaker. That was the last time I think we had a ban in Standard. So, but anyways, that's what I got for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this deck tech video. I hope you guys got something out of it. If you want to see more of these where I break down things like this, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you guys think. I like talking about certain decks. I like brewing decks. I like doing all this stuff with Magic, you know, playing, doing everything. So this is my way of putting my 2 cents in on this, and hope you guys liked it. Hope you guys enjoyed it. So with that, I'm going to leave you guys like I always leave you. Hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, stay syrupy, my friends.
Magic dreams in my hand tonight. Summon legends, see them ignite. Battlefields, roaring cars in flight. In this realm of magic, I take flight.